Um, hey, graveyard interviews. This is a fun one. Um, get dirty, digging up the past. Uh, this is something we do in-house, and it's really interesting. I'm sure you've all heard the quote, "Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it." So let's imagine, we're a year out, maybe 2 years out. You spent some time building a product. The tech is looking good. The architecture was good. You built a go-to-market plan. You've got a couple of team members lined up either on the bench or, coming on board. And you've even got a first few customers. You were able to, get the pilots, going, and everything's looking great. And then one day, poof, it's gone. You're out of money. For some reason, the market said no thanks when you thought it was, saying, come on in. And so, what if, there was somebody who had already walked the path you're about to take, somebody who had built a similar tech, somebody who had chased the same customers and failed. So the real tragedy here is that they didn't try, is that you didn't learn from their learnings. So the way that we do that in-house is what we call the graveyard interview. And it's one of the fastest ways to save yourself months or even years of wasted time. So I'll show you exactly what the graveyard interview is, how we do it, what to ask, and being able to turn somebody else's failure and learnings into your competitive advantage. So let's move forward, Cindy, if you can advance the slides a little bit. So you can see we've got this little acrostic style poem or acronym here that GRAVE actually stands for first, uh, gather. So let's just say what it is. A graveyard interview is a conversation with someone who worked at a company that failed trying to solve the same problem that you're trying to solve now. So these conversations are gold for one reason. They tell you where the landmines are before you're going to step on them. If you're brave enough to potentially kiss your startup baby, goodbye, you can use the grave method and, start with this. So first, gather. Find a few companies that no longer exist that may have pivoted away from your problem space or tried to do it and failed. Um, research, figure out who are the key team members, the funding sources and customer segments that they were going after to try to understand, is it exactly my business idea? Is it a little bit different? Who is this person? What's their background? How's it different from mine, etc. After you've got a good sense of the lay of the land, approach them. Reach out in a way that earns trust and shows respect for their past work. V for validate. We're going to use our questions to validate our learnings and confirm what killed the business and what actually worked. Sometimes you can find out things that were much easier than we thought they were going to be and get surprised by some of the learnings. And when we do this in our validation sprints, we often uncover make or break insights in just a single conversation. So why don't you move forward one more second? A couple of examples before moving forward. So we did one in healthcare. We were doing a healthcare business. We were working on a transcription product, and we found out that there was a very similar product. We reached out to the founder. We asked them what happened, and he made no bones about it. Like the big problem for them was customer acquisition costs. They were trying to do something that was very um, B2C. And so the customer acquisition was a big challenge for that value proposition. They just couldn't economically get it to work. Everything else about it, the technology, the rest of the market that they were going into, the context, the value proposition were all very strong. It was just the unit economics didn't work because of the model. So we decided, okay, if we're going to do that, this is kind of an easy decision for us because we're a B2B studio. Let's go ahead and do a B2B2C. So we'll sell it to the clinics, and the clinics will quote unquote sell it onwards. And that was a business model change we made as we went forward validating that. It was golden and the calculations look really solid. So that learning allowed us to steer clear of what looked like good unit economics, but turned out in practice to be much worse. Next slide, Cindy. In retail, we were working with this really great industry veteran founder. She knew everything about retail, really, really deep industry expertise. And we validated a super real problem around pricing and promotion in brick and mortar retail. It felt underserved. All the customers we talked to were like, yeah, nobody's really helping us with this. And, that can be a good thing and a bad thing, right? In this case, we realized, okay, we found one company that had been around and they'd actually been solving the problem for almost 20 years. We found a longstanding executive. We reached out to him and he shared that in those 20 years, he didn't feel like they still had product market fit. They were essentially one of those software companies that looked like a software company, but were really doing mostly service. And that was where they were making their money. They validated that there was a problem there, but to be able to solve that problem, they had to do so many services to pull data out of those businesses, integrate with a billion different systems, clean up the data, that it wasn't really economical for them to be able to live with that en masse. So they could work with a few huge customers, and the ongoing services component were the biggest part of their business. They did validate that the problem was real, and they did validate that their technology worked, but the rest of it told us that, you know what, we don't know more than them. We're not even as good at tech as this tech-driven founder. We're going to walk away from this problem and not do it. So it steered us clear of an entire market. Wealth management is a space we're working on, at the moment, and we have been doing back channel interviews on competitors, which is kind of a different kind of interview. But we couldn't find any failed solutions doing what we're trying to do, and so we didn't do any graveyard interviews. This is like 4 months into the project, and just last week or the week before, Iman here on the call noticed that, hey, there's another business out here doing what we're trying to do, and they failed very recently. So we're just scheduling up some graveyard interviews there. This is something where, we're kind of surprised to see it so late. And again, it wasn't even in searching, it was just by looking for something else completely differently. All right, next slide. I'll walk you through how to do this in a little bit more detail. So first piece is, gathering. And so wherever you need to look for this kind of stuff, you can look. It could be Crunchbase, it could be Product Hunt Archive, it could be, there's actually a list called Startup Graveyard. You can filter for your category and find companies that have done something similar. Basically, you just want to try to find if there's a company that did what you're trying to do that no longer exists. Second step, figure out who to talk to. And so usually you can find on LinkedIn, based on the company, is there some ex-founders? Those are the best ones to talk to because they're going to be very honest about what worked and what didn't. If there's any ex-PMs, like product managers or sales leads, both of them can give you great insights into what was working from a product market fit side and how hard was it to actually reach into that market. Focus on those who left, hopefully not like yesterday, because they might still be feeling a little bit raw and emotionally attached to the project. If it's 6 months or more, then you're going to be a little bit more sensitive. Use your own discretion there. So then send them a note and just keep it really short and keep it human and tell them, hey, I came across your company while researching this problem space that I'm interested in solving, and it looks like you guys did some really amazing work. I'd love to hear about your journey and what you learned over a quick call. And just shoot them a LinkedIn, and if that doesn't work, shoot them an email, and if that doesn't work, try to find them on another platform on X or whatever, and slide into their DMs and get them on the phone. Again, people are usually really willing to talk about this kind of stuff. Next, you want to have a really clear set of validation questions, and they'll be based on what your key hypotheses are. And we'll talk about that another time in terms of how to draw those out effectively and prioritize what are your learning goals. But what you really want to do is learn, and you're not trying to pitch. You're not trying to convince them that the way that you're going to do this is better. You're really just selling, or sorry, you're not selling at all. You're just learning. What worked, what didn't, what surprised you, how did customers buy, what did they like, what was it like getting into the market? Whatever your key, learning goals are, ask questions around that. Whatever you don't know, you want this to fill in. And this is where you need to be a little direct, is, asking them like, guys, like, how come it didn't work out? Why'd you fail? They'll give you single attribution fallacy, which is something that we all have as people, where we tend to put too much focus on one thing as the reason why. But it's good to know what they think it is. That can be important. Um, Last, extract and apply your insights. So write down the patterns that you find if you do a couple of different interviews, and use them to make changes to your product, your pricing, your go-to-market. Worst case scenario, which is also a good case scenario, you learn that your idea isn't going to work and there's no change you can see to make it work. Just decide not to build in that space. I'm going to give you a couple common mistakes. One is don't accept vague answers. If people are saying like, yeah, we tried and this part really wasn't working, get specific. Tell them like, okay, well, what do you mean people weren't buying, on calls, or the tech was hard? What was hard about it? What did you try? What didn't work? Just get them to keep talking until they really spill the beans. And they won't answer if they're not comfortable. So you got to work to make them comfortable. The second big mistake is your ego filter. You want this thing to work. You need to push for this thing to work. And as much as we're trying to invalidate and I the bad ideas and validate, the good ones, um, we can get attached to the outcome of making it work. So don't let your ego give you confirmation bias. They failed for a reason. You want to make sure that that reason is known to you and you are not repeating that reason in any way. Saying, oh, we're better or we're different or we're not going to have that just isn't realistic. So I'll leave it there. Next one, Sydney. So if you want to try this out, it's really quick. You can do it in an hour. You can probably find someone who's worked on an idea that you may be working on. When it comes time and you're at that step in the process, send one message to a graveyard founder and see what happens. And the big remember here is that we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflection on experience. And the cheapest, fastest experience you have access to when starting a new business is the experience of someone who failed before you. And as is often said, failure is a better teacher than success. So again, imagine all that time, money, and stress you could save if you get that one key insight that killed a previous company before committing 3, 6, 18 months. Um, I'm pretty sure we've saved at least $1 million worth of investor money in the last 18 months. We've been doing graveyard interviews. So I'll leave it there.